So in this lesson, we're going to be talking about what you should be, or how really you should be working with parents, parent volunteers, and parent ambassadors in your school. Parents are, amazing, and in many situations, in many schools, they really help in major ways. I talk to schools day in and day out, and they tell me about ways that parents work with them in different areas of running the school, and how important they are to the school. But I want to put a cautionary note on this, because it's parent engagement and having parents involved is very critical to a school. At the same time, it should never be something that the school depends on to succeed. So sometimes there's this fine balance that we see. Some schools are leaning on their parents a little too much. So I want to talk about I want to make a distinction between the types of things you should be, how you should be engaging parents in school operations, and really things that you want to try to stay away from, so that you can avoid some problems that we see on a very regular basis. So I'm going to start with the negative. I'm going to start with the things that you don't want to do. So in general, you want to stay away from relying on parents to run things that are really critical to the operations of the school. Oftentimes, I'll just give you one example. I'm talking to a school and we're looking at their website, and it's out of date. It's got information from 1 or 2 years ago, and they literally cannot. They have no idea. The school director or the admissions director has no idea how to go in and make an update. They have no ability to update the website, even though their website is hosted on a content management system that really all you should have to be able to do, just log in, username and password, you go in, you go to that page, and you just make an edit like you would on a Word document. It should be that easy, but again, the person that's running the school isn't a website expert. They don't know how to use technology. They had a parent who was an amazing parent, and they came in and they built their website, and then what happened? Something happened. The parent's not there anymore. Maybe the child just essentially graduated from the school, and it's just something that wasn't managed. And unfortunately, we see this literally daily. This is a very common scenario, and it happened because the school didn't think about the whole sort of pie of managing a website as part of how critical it is for the school. And today, websites are very critical for the school. So beyond just right now in this moment, we need somebody to go in and put these words on the website. Oftentimes a parent comes in, they'll make the website for the school either as a volunteer or as some type of negotiation to reduce their tuition. And that's okay if the website wasn't this really huge critical component of the school's business, but it really is. So the school should never be in a position where they have to rely on a volunteer to make very important changes, especially if the school is having a harder time keeping enrollment up, right? So when enrollment is full and you've got a long waiting list, and you just can't stop the inquiries from happening, then the website doesn't feel that critical. But for most schools, enrollment is lower these days because of market conditions, and that trend is increasing, not decreasing. So the website is the entry point online, right? So not to focus too much on the website, but that's an example. So another good example is bookkeeping. So I've seen schools be in a position where a parent volunteer came in, and they ended up, becoming the bookkeeper. But they're doing it on a volunteer basis, and bookkeeping is incredibly important. It's also really boring, and it's tedious for some people. They enjoy it. I don't know how, but reconciling all the expenses and everything every month is not something I personally consider as a vacation, but some people really enjoy it. Some parents that you have in the school, they're just the right personality. They love doing it. But the thing is that it's so important to have your books correct. And so just just anybody that puts their hand up isn't good, right? If you happen to have a parent volunteer that is a real bookkeeper and they're an accountant and they're able to actually treat you like a client, then it makes sense to work with them, maybe. But because this is so critical, you should probably have a real client relationship with somebody that you're actually paying, where there's a transaction. If they happen to be a parent at your school, fine. But here's the thing. You want to make sure that the relationship with that parent, with that professional in that area, is not going to disappear when their children graduate. You want to make sure that you are a real customer, and you should be paying them. And even if you're giving them a discount, like you should still be paying them like you are their client, and it needs to be professional, and it needs to last beyond. This professional relationship needs to go beyond the children that are in the school. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for some type of challenge of finding somebody new, or in the worst case scenario, getting into some hot water with the government and things like that, or just not having your expenses tracked properly, and unfortunately, not realizing you had all this extra money that you had to spend to cover things that weren't really clear because that person left and you didn't know how to pick up the job, or you didn't have somebody else that did. So you want to make sure, as much as possible, for anything that's critical operationally in the school, things like your website, your marketing strategy, your bookkeeping, your accounting, you want to make sure that you have ideally a subscription-based relationship. That's happening a lot these days, where you pay a set monthly fee, you get a certain amount of service, but it's good, it's done by professionals, and even if they're not necessarily domain experts for running a school, they quickly become it because you have this long-term relationship. But you want to make sure that you have a standalone relationship with a professional in these critical areas, anything that you don't know how to do yourself. And for most people running a school, your domain of expertise, your deep experience is usually in education. And it makes sense for you to focus on that as much as possible, and not try to do bookkeeping and marketing yourself, because you won't do as good of a job as somebody else who just does that all day long. So if you are, if you think about it, paying for professionals, although it seems like it's expensive, the school does it all day long. Like you pay teachers, they're professional teachers because they're experts in that area. You want to do the same thing with every other part of the business. And if you don't, you're setting yourself up to pay a heck of a lot more money in expenses, or not having enough students coming in. It's much more expensive to run a school, to manage a school poorly. The entire business side of the school is much more expensive if you don't have that managed well, managed by experts, than it is to pay those experts. So that's what you want to stay away from. So let's talk about what you want to do with parents. I mean, like I said, parents, it's amazing. The more parents you can have involved, the healthier and stronger your community will be. You're going to see better outcomes with your students. Of course, there's the right type of parent involvement or parent engagement, and then there's the wrong type, so you want to stay away from that. I'm not really going to get into, it's not my place to talk about how to really integrate parents into the classroom, but I know a lot of schools do that. But on a higher level, having parents involved in the school will have more of those parents, more of your customers, feeling like they're part of it. Like this is not just where their kids go to school. This is something that they themselves are a part of, and that's creates a sense of community. That's incredible. Like probably the most important outcome of that is going to be a higher retention rate. So, if your families are more involved, they're more, they're putting in sort of equity, so to speak, sweat equity. They're obviously paying you to have their children in your school, and then they're putting in their own time. They're all the more invested, and it's really something that they are a part of, and it's a part of them. And so there's no question that it's obvious. That's a better scenario. At the same time, it's more people to manage, right? So you have to weigh the balances, and there's a way to do it. So what I suggest when I talk to school directors or anybody in the admin is I ask them, how are they working with their parents? What types of expectations are they setting? And also, what type of additional management challenge are, like, you could be adding layers of complexity to running the school the more you work with volunteers. Volunteers are not free. That's something that's super critical to understand. You don't have to pay them for their time, but they're not free because they're taking your time and your attention and your stress. And they're taking your time and attention away from other things that are critical for you to do to keep the school running and growing. So again, it's all about balance, and it's not the easiest thing to figure out. So what you want to do is you want to start small, and don't just jump in. Don't just take a parent on to like make your website. That's jumping in way too big on something that's super critical for the school. Start small. Think about smaller, not large strategic things that have a large strategic outcome. Think about things that are more small and tactical that are easy for anybody to do. And if there's if somebody can at some point in the admissions process be available to have a meeting with a prospective parent, let's just call it even a 5-minute phone call, right? So that parents come in for the tour, they're really impressed, they want to have a 5 to 10 minute phone call. Maybe they'll hit it off and they'll talk for hours or go out for coffee, who knows, right? But it's about the level of commitment that you're asking for from the parent, and also the level of commitment that you are going to have to put in to actually get the value of working with this parent. I can't give you a straight calculation, but it's something that you have to feel out for yourself, of course, right? Every school is different. Every person's got a different mixture of parents with different abilities and time. But my suggestion is always keep it to small tactical steps, certainly when you begin. And don't get me wrong, some schools are just super lucky. They've got a parent volunteer that really understands how to be a volunteer, and they even do critical things. But on a more general note, you want to stay away from giving parents really the keys to like destroy your business, and that's ultimately what can happen. If a website can drastically hurt your business if it's not, it can not only be a major opportunity loss because you're not going to get the enrollment, the inquiries that otherwise would have come into the school because the website is being mismanaged. That's a big opportunity loss. It can also hurt you, right? It can, if a parent is running your ads and something happens, or you're spending money. Let's say you're spending money. You hire a parent to run Google ads or Facebook ads, and they're spending money on something and they're not doing a good job, or they're approaching it like from their experience in a different kind of business domain, and they take something from selling used cars to and they apply the type of sort of we call it clickbait, or discount type of messaging, or buy now, that type of marketing, and they apply that to a school, which is like the antithesis of what you should be doing. They might show some kind of results, but ultimately you might be spending a lot of money to generate a whole bunch of parents that are just looking for subsidies and discounts, and like that's the last thing. Those are the last types of parents you should be spending your marketing on. So that's that, and that's an exact scenario that I've seen multiple times. The parent was an expert in Facebook ads, but not the type of marketing approach that is really appropriate for a school, and one that actually hurts the school by spending money on marketing to the wrong people. So you want to be very careful, and again, start small, and don't try to take on too many parents at once. You want to, once you have processes in place, try to look for opportunities where parents can come in for one step in the process and improve it or relieve a staff member from having to perform it. But small steps, small tactical steps, not really large, strategies that can really make or break a school. Never rely on parents. Never depend on parents. Ultimately, it's really easy to do. Parents swoop in. They say, "I'm going to do this." The school director didn't really know how to do it anyways, and they didn't want to pay a professional or pay anybody to do it. So it can end up really having a big impact on the bottom line, and you want to stay away from those scenarios. So in this lesson, we're going to be talking about incentives that you can give to parents. So there's two main incentives that I usually advise schools to use. One of them is an incentive for referrals. So that's a great way to engender that word of mouth. When I talk to people, when I'm interviewing a school and I ask them, how do you do marketing? They usually say, "Oh, we do word of mouth marketing." But the thing is that's not actually a marketing strategy. Word of mouth marketing, you want to look at it as a result. That's you're going to get word of mouth referrals ideally, and most schools, the majority of their new students usually come from organic word of mouth referrals from parents that currently have children in the school or recently had children in the school. Because you've got a great school, and unfortunately though, that used to be, for most schools, all they had to do, just have a great school, everybody talks about it, parents hear about it from their friends that have kids in your school, and they bring their kids to your school. Unfortunately, while that still happens, parents are, there's all these different market factors that are making that not sufficient for most schools today. Families are having less children, and then there's just way more options. The market's expanded by 25% in the last 25 years. Daily, I talk to schools and they tell me that 10 years ago, they were the only school in the area. Now there's 3 other Montessori schools and a couple other daycare options or preschool options. So you're looking at it's kind of a different world in regards to what you need to do, So how can you help that organic referral happen? So it's a little bit less organic, but if you can give parents an incentive to bring in other families, then you're looking at, you're probably going to see a boost in those referrals happening because, listen, the price of tuition it's not cheap. It's not cheap to run a school, and therefore it's not cheap to have your children in a great school. So it's a worthwhile investment all around. If you give parents a little bit of a nudge, give them an incentive, because if somebody comes from a word of mouth referral, that's a much cheaper form of marketing, even if you're giving the parent some type of incentive. Another incentive you can give parents is, let's say they come in with their first child, their oldest child, and they've got 1 or 2 or maybe even more children that, ideally would come into your school as well. So you might end up with 2 or 3, quote unquote, for the price of 1. So by price, I mean marketing expense. It's ideally, again, working back to generating the awareness about the school. If you can generate enough awareness that creates enough inquiries, you're going to be in a position where you can be selective. And if you're looking at one family that's got one child and another family that's got 3 kids, and they're both a perfect fit for your school, and let's say you only have one spot, you really should prioritize your time and efforts on the family with multiple children, because ideally they'll all enroll. And they're more likely to enroll if you give that parent a further incentive to bring their kids in. So let's talk about the amount of the incentive. So there's no one number. It's all going to depend on multiple inputs, but I want to kind of frame how you should think about it. So ultimately, you should have a marketing strategy that informs you as to your cost of acquisition of a child, of a new student. So if you know what your cost per student is, and I'm talking about specifically the cost of marketing and acquiring a new student that didn't come from a word-of-mouth referral. So for some schools that'll equal to $100. For other schools it'll be $500. So it all depends. Additionally, you want to be looking at how much time does it take to go out and find a new school. So not only is there a marketing expense, the dollars you pay into Facebook ads or Google ads or whatever you happen to be doing. Hopefully Facebook ads is your best way to spend your money, but at least as of November 2018. But what you want to be thinking is, you want to try to put a number on, there's a value to your time as well, and there's not only a hard cost, because people get paid. You also have an opportunity cost. If you're spending more time going out there trying to get more students in, you're not spending time doing other things. So again, there's no one set number, there's no one set percentage, but if you have an idea, and if you don't have an idea of what your cost of acquiring a new student is, figure that out. It's really, really important. Because without that, you don't have any kind of marketing strategy, and you have no way of budgeting. So you need to know that, number one. Number two, take that number and also get a sense as to how valuable it is for you not to have to put the time and effort in to finding a new student. Put a number on that. And I'm not saying whatever number you come to is going to be the right one. You might try to figure out one number. 3 months later, you realize, it should be this number. That's fine. All of this stuff is always a work in progress. But try to come up with that number. And it's very easy to, once you have that amount, to reduce that from each subsequent child's tuition. And that gives the parents a bit more reason to enroll. And I think that number is bigger than, so one thing I'll suggest is whatever number you come up with, you're probably better off going even more, because again, keeping your school full with the right families is you have to obviously have enough operational revenue coming in to keep the lights on and be developing your programming and doing all the things that you need to do. But I would lean towards a larger incentive, especially for families that have more than one child, even more than, in comparison to, just doing word-of-mouth referrals and giving an incentive on that. That's great, but you don't know that family coming in yet. You don't know if they're going to be your favorite family. Even if they seem like the perfect family, there's still some kind of risk there that they're going to come in and be crazy. So if you have a family sitting in front of you and you know they're perfect for your school and you wish you could clone them, then go as far as you can to keep that family in your school with all of their kids. There could not be a better decision. There's no better reason to give an incentive. So definitely prioritize that, and then maybe give a smaller incentive to word of mouth referrals.